Is it possible that within the pages of the Bible lies a prosperity formula so clear, so practical, and yet so overlooked that it could change the entire trajectory of your life? There is a verse tucked away in Psalm 112 that many have read, recited, even memorized, yet few have truly decoded. This is not a mystical riddle reserved for the spiritually elite. It is a universal law written in timeless language, waiting to be activated by the one who dares to see beyond tradition and step into spiritual clarity. As Joseph Murphy once taught, every line of Scripture is more than poetry or ritual. It is a coded revelation of the mind's relationship to divine order. Let this not be another passive moment of listening, but a decision to invest in your growth, to claim a higher vision of life. Psalm 112 is not a mere hymn of devotion, it is a blueprint. It sketches a portrait of a person who lives anchored in faith, whose character and thoughts radiate stability, and whose life reflects abundance not as accident, but as law. Blessed is the man that feareth the Lord, that delighteth greatly in his commandments. In those few words, the psalm opens the door to a kind of prosperity that transcends fleeting trends or material obsessions. This blessing is rooted in a reverent understanding of order, that the universe operates with precision, that thoughts shape experience, and that spiritual principles are as consistent as gravity itself. The ancient writers understood what many in modern times have forgotten, that prosperity begins not in a paycheck or a market swing, but in consciousness. To fear the Lord, in its original meaning, was not to cower in dread, but to stand in awe of a reality larger than ego, to revere the unseen intelligence that governs all things. The person who lives in that awareness aligns themselves with a current of power and peace that no external storm can disrupt. Their wealth is not a trophy to hoard, but an expression of harmony. In this first step of our journey, we are not here to dissect Scripture as scholars or theologians. We are here to awaken to a practical code. Consider how many have read these verses, yet failed to extract their power. Like travelers passing a signpost on the road, they nod at the beauty of the words, but never follow where they point. Yet these ancient words invite us to more than admiration. They demand application. Joseph Murphy devoted his life to translating spiritual wisdom into psychological clarity, showing that faith is not merely belief, but creative energy. When he spoke of prayer, he described it as the soul's sincere desire, a mental blueprint impressed upon the subconscious, which in turn expresses itself in outer experience. This is the same principle pulsing through Psalm 112. Your inner state dictates your outer results. The righteous man described here is not righteous because of religious performance, but because he lives in harmony with law. He thinks truth, feels truth, and therefore manifests truth. Pause and consider your own life for a moment. How many of your pursuits have been driven by fear of lack rather than faith in abundance? How many times have you sought prosperity through frantic striving only to feel emptier after achieving what you thought you wanted? The psalm points us toward a quieter path, one where wealth flows not from hustle, but from alignment, where generosity is not a strategy, but a natural overflow of a heart anchored in trust. This is why the ancient verse declares that such a person's seed shall be mighty upon earth. This is not simply a promise of biological offspring, but a symbol of influence, of ideas planted in the soil of time that bear fruit for generations. In this light, prosperity is not a flash of success, but a legacy. It is the natural byproduct of a mind that has become fertile ground for truth. As we decode this text together, you will notice that its power lies in its simplicity. The spiritual path does not require a labyrinth of rituals or the memorization of obscure doctrines. It requires clarity. It asks that you examine your inner life with honesty, For your thoughts are seeds, your emotions are water, and your actions are sunlight. If you sow fear, you will reap anxiety. If you sow faith and integrity, you will reap stability and abundance. This is not an abstract philosophy reserved for monasteries or Sunday services. It is a law written into the structure of your being. The wisdom of Joseph Murphy emphasizes that your subconscious mind is like a rich garden, always ready to grow whatever you plant. The psalmist paints a picture of a soul that plants wisely, waters consistently, and trusts the process. That trust is what makes him not afraid of evil tidings, for his heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord. Can you imagine such a posture, a heart unshaken by headlines, bank statements, or the opinions of others? That is true prosperity. Not merely wealth in numbers, but wealth in stability. From this foundation, the psalm invites us deeper. It is not enough to admire principles, they must be lived. The words become flesh when you choose to think in harmony with them. Prosperity is not a reward handed down from heaven, but a state of consciousness cultivated on earth. It is the product of right thought, consistent feeling, and deliberate action. The man or woman described in Psalm 112 has made their mind a sanctuary for divine ideas, and the result is visible not only in their own life, but in the lives they touch. We are not here to worship the formula as if it were magic. We are here to embody it. Joseph Murphy's genius was in showing that spiritual truth is practical psychology. The psalm is not a chant, but a call to mental discipline. The fear of the Lord is the recognition of an orderly universe, and delighting in His commandments means delighting in the laws of mind, that thoughts reproduce after their kind, that gratitude multiplies blessings, and that generosity activates circulation. As we move through these teachings, picture yourself stepping into a current of wisdom that has been flowing for thousands of years. You are not inventing something new, but rediscovering what has always been. The psalmist's words, Joseph Murphy's insights, and the universal laws of mind converge here, offering a clear invitation. Prosperity is not hidden from you. It is hidden for you, waiting to be unlocked by understanding and faith. In this first section, let your heart settle into a posture of expectation. We will walk through this psalm verse by verse, principle by principle, not as casual readers, but as seekers determined to see through the veil of tradition into the mechanics of abundance. Your mind is about to receive seeds of truth that can rewrite patterns, dissolve fear, and establish a foundation for lasting wealth in every sense of the word. The journey begins here, not with a new belief to adopt, but with an awakening to a reality that has been whispering to you all along. Prosperity has long been misunderstood as a stroke of luck, a fortunate accident, or a divine whim reserved for a chosen few. Yet when you look closely at Psalm 112, it dismantles that myth. Prosperity, in this ancient vision, is not a mysterious blessing that descends from the heavens on random lives. It is a state of being that flows from conscious alignment. The psalm is deliberate in its language, describing not just outcomes, but the nature of the person who experiences them. Their wealth is the visible result of an inward order, a harmony with the rhythm of life itself. Consider the first verse again. Blessed is the man that feareth the Lord, that delighteth greatly in His commandments. Here, fear is not terror, but reverence. It is recognition of an intelligence greater than personal ego, a divine order that undergirds all existence. To delight in commandments is not merely about religious rule-keeping, but about aligning oneself with universal principles, those subtle laws of mind and spirit that govern prosperity as predictably as gravity governs motion. When you understand this, prosperity ceases to feel like a gamble. It becomes a natural consequence of being in tune with truth. This understanding changes the way you interpret success. Society often portrays wealth as a result of relentless ambition, strategic networking, or even manipulation. But the psalmist speaks of a deeper law. Prosperity flows to the one whose heart is steady, whose character reflects integrity, and whose mind is anchored in faith. It is less about chasing opportunities and more about becoming the kind of person opportunities are drawn to. Joseph Murphy echoed this truth often. The subconscious mind mirrors your dominant beliefs and feelings, and it always seeks to reproduce them in physical experience. When you are internally aligned, external circumstances adjust accordingly. Alignment begins with a clear mental posture. Many people carry conflicting beliefs about money, abundance, and worthiness. They may desire prosperity yet secretly believe it is unspiritual, or they crave success while holding guilt for wanting more. This inner division prevents them from experiencing the fullness of what is available. Psalm 112 portrays an undivided mind, a person whose delight is in the laws of God, who trusts fully in divine order, and who acts from that trust without hesitation. This is not blind faith. It is a disciplined awareness that life operates by design, not chaos. In practical terms, this means prosperity is not something to chase, but something to embody. Think of it like tuning a musical instrument. If a guitar is slightly off pitch, no matter how skillfully it's played, the sound will never be quite right. The musician must first align the strings to their proper frequencies. Likewise, your thoughts, emotions, and choices are like strings on an instrument. If they are out of harmony with spiritual law, the music of your life feels dissonant. But once tuned, every note you play resonates with clarity and richness. Joseph Murphy described faith as a mental attitude, a way of thinking in accordance with the eternal truths of life. This is the heart of alignment. You are not asked to manipulate reality or force outcomes. You are invited to adjust your consciousness to a higher pattern. In this sense, prosperity is not earned, but allowed. It is already present as a potential, waiting for you to become receptive to it. Let's revisit another verse. Wealth and riches shall be in his house, and his righteousness endureth forever. Notice the order. First comes righteousness, then wealth. Righteousness here is not religious performance, but rightness, the alignment of thought and action with truth. Wealth, then, is the natural expression of that inner state. The house symbolizes your life, your inner world, your consciousness. When that house is filled with integrity, gratitude, and faith, material blessings naturally follow. It is tempting to read this as a promise of luxury or extravagance, but Scripture often speaks in symbols. Wealth is more than money. It is stability, joy, relationships, opportunities, and spiritual authority. It is an inner richness that cannot be stolen or diminished by external events. This is why the psalm emphasizes that his righteousness endures forever. A person anchored in spiritual law carries a wealth that transcends time and circumstance. Even when storms come, their foundation holds. Think of a tree deeply rooted in fertile soil. When drought arrives, the tree does not panic. Its roots reach deep into unseen sources of nourishment. Others may see only the parched ground and assume the tree will wither, but the hidden depth sustains it. This is the prosperity described in Psalm 112. It is not a shallow, surface-level abundance that vanishes when conditions shift. It is a deep reservoir of supply flowing from spiritual understanding. In daily life, this means prosperity is activated, not by frantic activity, but by consistent alignment. You align with spiritual law through your thoughts, words, and choices. You honor truth even in small decisions. You cultivate gratitude not as a ritual, but as a natural response to life. And over time, this posture transforms your experience. Many resist this concept because it feels intangible. They want quick results or visible proof before they trust the process. Yet the psalm invites a different approach. His heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord. This fixed heart is not rigid, it is steady. It does not waver with every headline or setback. It trusts in a deeper reality, one that is often invisible to the physical eye, but no less real. Joseph Murphy often compared faith to planting a seed. When a gardener places a seed in the soil, they do not dig it up every day to check its progress. They water it, nourish it, and trust that growth is happening beneath the surface. In the same way, a heart fixed on truth does not panic when outward appearances seem barren. It knows the law is working, even in silence. So, what does this mean for you as a listener today? It means that prosperity is closer than you think. It is not hidden behind luck or privilege, but within your consciousness, waiting to be unlocked by alignment. This is not a motivational slogan, but a spiritual principle. The prosperity formula is simple. Align your thoughts and feelings with truth. Take action consistent with that alignment, and watch as life reflects your inner state. You may feel resistance at first. Old beliefs will try to pull you back into scarcity thinking. But this is where trust becomes essential. You are not simply believing in yourself, you are believing in a higher intelligence that has ordered the universe. That intelligence is not withholding abundance from you. It is inviting you to rise into a new level of awareness. Psalm 112 is your invitation. Its words are not meant to be admired like a painting on a wall, but lived as a daily reality. When you begin to see prosperity as alignment rather than luck, everything changes. Fear loosens its grip because you understand that you are not at the mercy of circumstance. Hope becomes tangible because you are connected to a source that never runs dry. This is not theory, it is a way of life, a way of tuning your mind to the frequency of abundance that has always been available. The man or woman who lives this way is not merely blessed. They are a blessing, radiating stability and generosity to all who encounter them. Faith is often spoken of as if it were merely a feeling or a fleeting hope, a quiet wish that things will somehow work out. But the faith described in Psalm 112 and echoed in Joseph Murphy's teachings is not a weak sentiment. It is mental architecture. It is the structure of thought upon which your life is built. And like any structure, it can be carefully designed or carelessly assembled. Consider how the psalmist describes the person of faith. Their heart is fixed, their mind anchored, their life stable. This is not the language of emotion, it is the language of engineering. Faith is a deliberate alignment of thought, a decision to build your mental world according to principles that never fail. When Murphy wrote about prayer and belief, he described them not as superstitious rituals, but as blueprints for your subconscious. He understood that the mind does not simply respond to fleeting feelings. It follows the dominant patterns you impress upon it with conviction. Think of your mind as a house under construction. Each belief is a brick, each thought a beam of wood, each assumption a part of the foundation. If you build with fear, worry, and scarcity, your inner house will be fragile, unable to withstand the storms of life. But if you choose faith as your material, you create a mental structure that remains steady even when circumstances shift. The psalm says, "Surely he shall not be moved forever," because his faith is not a passing mood, but a solid frame, built with precision. Faith as mental architecture requires intention. It is not enough to hope for abundance, one must deliberately construct beliefs that align with abundance. This is why Joseph Murphy emphasized affirmations, visualization, and disciplined thought, not as magical incantations, but as tools for reprogramming the subconscious. He understood that the subconscious mind does not argue. It accepts the impressions you give it. If you consistently feed it fear, it will faithfully reproduce fear in your experience. If you feed it trust and abundance, it will manifest stability and supply. This principle is echoed in every verse of Psalm 112. The person who fears the Lord and delights in His commandments is a person who has chosen their mental materials wisely. They understand that divine law is not something external to obey out of fear. It is an internal reality to align with out of wisdom. When you delight in the commandments, you are essentially saying, I choose to build my life upon truth because I trust the strength of this foundation. But let us be clear, faith is not blind. True faith is intelligent. It studies life, observes universal law, and builds accordingly. The engineer who designs a bridge does not simply hope it will hold. They understand the laws of physics and trust those laws enough to create something reliable. Likewise, faith is a deep understanding that the universe operates in order, not chaos, and that aligning your mind with truth is as practical as aligning your actions with gravity. Joseph Murphy taught that your subconscious mind is like fertile soil. Whatever seed you plant, it will grow. Faith is not pretending a seed will grow. It is understanding that if you plant it, nurture it, and trust the law of growth, it cannot fail to produce after its kind. The same applies to every thought you cultivate. A thought of abundance, impressed with conviction, grows into experiences of abundance. A thought of fear, repeated often enough, bears fruit in anxiety and limitation. The psalm is essentially a spiritual gardener's manual. Choose your seeds wisely, for they will reproduce endlessly. Notice also how the psalm links faith with emotional steadiness. He shall not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord. A fixed heart is not cold or indifferent. It is stable. This stability is the natural result of strong mental architecture. When you build your life on faith, bad news may come, but it does not shake you at your core. Your house stands because it was built on rock, not sand. This kind of faith is rare because it requires discipline. Many people treat their minds like an open field where any seed can land and grow. They allow the weeds of doubt and fear to overtake the garden because they do not guard their thoughts. But the person of Psalm 112 is a conscious builder. They do not let every idea take root. They choose their mental materials carefully. They recognize that their mind is sacred ground. Building faith as mental architecture also means reprogramming your subconscious with intention. Joseph Murphy often told stories of individuals who transformed their lives by changing their inner blueprint. One man, once trapped in poverty, began affirming daily that wealth and success were flowing into his life, not as wishful thinking, but as a deep conviction impressed upon his subconscious. Over time, his beliefs changed. His actions aligned with those beliefs, and his reality shifted. The change began not with luck, but with an inner structure strong enough to hold a new life. This is the essence of prosperity in Psalm 112. Wealth begins in the unseen. The outward results are simply the visible expression of an inward design. Faith is the architect, and thought is the builder. When these work together under divine law, your life becomes a reflection of that order. The world may call it luck, but you will know it as alignment. Think for a moment about your own mental architecture. What beliefs have you allowed to become the foundation of your life? Are they strong enough to hold the weight of your dreams, or are they fragile structures built from fear? Every experience you have is connected to a belief you hold, whether consciously or subconsciously. The good news is that you are never trapped by these beliefs. You can rebuild your mental house. But like any reconstruction, it requires effort, intention, and trust in the process. This is why Joseph Murphy's work resonates so deeply with Psalm 112. Both point to the inner world as the true source of prosperity. A fixed heart is not an accident. It is the product of daily mental discipline, prayerful reflection, and a willingness to uproot limiting ideas. When your faith becomes structural, when it is no longer a feeling but a design, you carry an authority that cannot be shaken. And so, faith is not merely belief in something unseen, it is the very framework of your consciousness. It is a deliberate architecture built from truth, strengthened by trust, and manifested in every area of your life. This understanding changes the way you approach wealth, relationships, health, and purpose. You stop chasing external proof and begin cultivating internal certainty. The psalmist's vision is of a person who stands firm in a world of shifting sands, not because they are lucky, but because they have built on eternal principles. As you let this truth settle in, remember that your subconscious mind is always building. Whether you realize it or not, your beliefs are shaping the structure of your life. The invitation of this section is clear. Become the architect of your faith. Choose your thoughts as carefully as an engineer selects steel beams. Let trust in divine law be the foundation that holds everything else. This is not poetic language. It is practical spirituality. When faith becomes your architecture, prosperity is inevitable. Not because you chase it, but because you have become the kind of person who naturally attracts it. The deeper you read Psalm 112, the more you see that prosperity is not just a reward, it is a reflection of character. This section shifts the focus from belief to being, from mental alignment to the inner quality of the person who embodies these truths. Unto the upright there ariseth light in the darkness. He is gracious and full of compassion and righteous. This is not a description of someone merely lucky. It is the portrait of a soul whose very nature radiates stability. Their wealth is not a fragile fortune. It is built on character, the unshakable currency of life. In every era, riches have changed hands, empires have risen and fallen, but character has remained the true measure of a person's wealth. Joseph Murphy understood this well. He wrote that external circumstances are a mirror reflecting the dominant mental and spiritual states within. If this is true, then the psalmist's words reveal that prosperity is not simply about financial success. It is about a quality of life rooted in integrity, generosity, and righteousness. The upright person does not seek to manipulate the law of mind for selfish gain. They align with truth because it is their nature to do so. Character, in this sense, is not something you perform for others. It is the sum of your inner convictions, choices, and habits. It is what you are when no one is watching. And this is where the law of mind becomes deeply practical. Your subconscious is constantly responding to your true self-concept, not your public persona. If you outwardly claim abundance, but inwardly operate from fear, dishonesty, or resentment, your life will reflect that inner contradiction. Psalm 112 offers a radical truth. Prosperity is inseparable from integrity. When the psalm says, "He is gracious and full of compassion," it is describing a heart posture that naturally attracts provision. Grace and compassion are not just moral virtues, they are vibrational states. They elevate consciousness, placing you in harmony with divine supply. Joseph Murphy often explained that resentment and greed block prosperity because they disrupt mental harmony. A bitter mind cannot create a flourishing life. A compassionate heart, on the other hand, opens channels of circulation. The law of giving and receiving flows through such a person because they have become a conduit rather than a dam. Consider how this applies in daily life. When your character is upright, opportunities trust you. People sense stability and authenticity even if they cannot explain why. Trust becomes a magnet, drawing partnerships, friendships, and resources. This is not manipulation, it is resonance. Just as a well-tuned instrument draws admiration for its clarity of sound, a well-ordered character draws respect and favor without forcing it. This is why wealth built without character is often short-lived. History is filled with examples of fortunes gained through deception or exploitation, only to collapse under the weight of instability. But the wealth described in Psalm 112 is enduring because it is anchored in righteousness. Righteousness is not a rigid moral code, but alignment with truth, fairness, and compassion. It is living in a way that reflects divine order. When your inner life is upright, you become a living expression of spiritual law. Joseph Murphy often illustrated this principle with real-life stories. He told of individuals who experienced radical turnarounds in their finances, health, and relationships, not because they discovered a new secret, but because they transformed their inner character. When they released bitterness, forgave past wrongs, and chose integrity over expedience, their lives began to flourish. The subconscious mind responds to character because character reflects belief. A person of integrity affirms through their actions that they trust divine law more than they trust shortcuts. Psalm 112 adds another layer. A good man showeth favor, and lendeth. He will guide his affairs with discretion. Prosperity is portrayed here not just as receiving, but as wisely stewarding resources. The upright person is generous, but also discerning. They are not careless with their wealth because they understand it is not merely personal property, but a trust. This view of stewardship elevates prosperity beyond mere consumption. It becomes a spiritual responsibility. In a culture obsessed with outward appearances, this message is countercultural. Character does not always produce instant results, and integrity is often costly in the short term. Yet the psalm promises that such a person shall never be moved. Their foundation is unshakable because it is not built on trends, manipulation, or temporary advantage. It is built on principles that cannot fail. This understanding also frees you from envy. When you know that true wealth is inseparable from character, you no longer feel threatened by others' success. You realize that prosperity is not a competition, but a reflection. Each person's experience mirrors their consciousness, and no one else's abundance diminishes your own potential. This shift is powerful because it releases you from comparison and allows you to focus fully on your own alignment. Murphy's writings often emphasize this. You cannot attract what you secretly resent. If you envy someone's success, you are unconsciously affirming that success is scarce or unjust, and your subconscious will mirror that belief. But when your character is rooted in gratitude and trust, you celebrate others' blessings because you see them as proof of universal law in action. This attitude accelerates your own prosperity because your mind has become a fertile field for abundance rather than a battleground of competition. Character also stabilizes your emotional life. A person of integrity is not easily swayed by fear or flattery because their identity is anchored in truth. This stability is priceless in a world where circumstances constantly shift. The psalm describes this person as not afraid of evil tidings. That phrase carries weight. To live without fear of bad news is to be truly free. It is not that challenges never come, it is that you are unshaken when they do. Such resilience is not developed overnight, but through daily choices to think, speak, and act from integrity. This brings us to a crucial realization. Prosperity is not something you earn as a reward for being good. It is something you attract naturally. When your character aligns with divine order, you become a channel through which abundance flows because your life reflects the qualities of the source itself, truth, generosity, and wisdom. The psalmist understood this deeply. painting a picture of prosperity that is not fragile or shallow, but deeply rooted. As you reflect on this, ask yourself, what qualities define my inner character? Do I make decisions from fear or from trust in divine law? Do I steward my resources with wisdom, or do I hoard them out of insecurity? These questions are not meant to condemn, but to illuminate. Awareness is the first step toward transformation, and transformation is the foundation of enduring wealth. The message of this section is clear. Character is currency. It is the invisible wealth that sustains all visible abundance. When you cultivate integrity, compassion, and wisdom, you are not merely preparing yourself to handle prosperity. You are already prosperous, for these qualities themselves are priceless. The external manifestations, financial stability, opportunities, influence, are simply the outworking of an inner life aligned with truth. And once you understand this, you stop chasing wealth and start cultivating character, knowing that the two are inseparable. The idea that thoughts carry generational weight is not merely poetic, it is deeply spiritual and profoundly practical. Psalm 112 declares, "His seed shall be mighty upon earth, the generation of the upright shall be blessed." This verse, often read as a promise for descendants, is also a powerful metaphor for the seeds of thought planted in the soil of your subconscious and in the minds of those you influence. Every belief you hold, every conviction you nurture, is a seed that can echo through time, shaping not only your life, but the lives of those who come after you. When Joseph Murphy taught about the subconscious mind, he emphasized that every thought is creative. The mind is a garden that never stops producing. Whether you are conscious of it or not, you are planting seeds every day through your thoughts, emotions, and spoken words. The psalmist's imagery reflects this timeless truth. The inner life of a righteous person creates a legacy that cannot be confined to their own lifespan. Thoughts are not fleeting vapors, they are living forces that bear fruit. Consider how this plays out in families and communities. Children raised in a home where scarcity is constantly spoken often internalize a worldview of lack, even if they later achieve outward success. Conversely, those raised in environments of faith, gratitude, and generosity often carry those qualities into adulthood, influencing their relationships, careers, and decisions. This is not mere psychology. It is spiritual law at work. Energy flows where attention goes, and the seeds planted in your mind become the patterns of your life. This realization should not weigh you down with guilt, but awaken you to responsibility. The thoughts you nurture today are building your future and shaping your influence. You cannot control everything your children or peers will face, but you can choose the atmosphere you create through your consciousness. Joseph Murphy often wrote that a single thought of faith deeply impressed upon the subconscious can change the trajectory of a life. The prayer was a seed, and it bore fruit. Think of your own mental patterns as a legacy. Are you planting seeds of anxiety or peace, fear or faith, scarcity or sufficiency? The psalmist emphasizes that the generation of the upright is blessed because righteousness, right alignment with divine law, produces lasting effects. It is not about being morally perfect, but about consistently aligning your thoughts and actions with truth. When you live this way, you create a ripple effect. Those around you sense your stability, your faith, your generosity, and they are influenced in ways you may never fully see. Murphy's teaching often pointed to the subconscious as a fertile field, but he also emphasized that this field does not discriminate. It will grow weeds as easily as wheat. That is why guarding your thoughts is not a suggestion, but a spiritual necessity. Each time you dwell on fear, anger, or limitation, you plant seeds that will eventually sprout. Each time you choose gratitude, trust, and love, you plant seeds of blessing. The Psalm's promise is not magic, it is cause and effect. There is a sobering truth here. The thoughts you entertain do not stay confined to your private inner world. They shape your tone of voice, your decisions, and your energy. People feel it, even if they cannot name it. A person who lives with a deep sense of abundance naturally speaks and acts differently than one consumed by fear of loss. This difference creates ripple effects in relationships, careers, and even health. In this sense, your mind is not just your personal garden, it is a source of nourishment or poison for others. But there is also hope in this reality. You may come from a lineage of fear, scarcity, or dysfunction, but you are not doomed to repeat those patterns. Psalm 112 declares that the generation of the upright will be blessed. This means you can plant new seeds that will outgrow the weeds of the past. Murphy taught that a single act of faith, a single mental breakthrough, can rewrite subconscious patterns that have been in place for years, even generations. When you align your thoughts with truth, you become a point of transformation for your entire lineage. Take a moment to consider this. What would it mean to be the one who breaks a cycle of fear or lack? What would it mean for future generations if your life became a demonstration of spiritual law in action? This is not just about wealth in the traditional sense. Prosperity includes wisdom, emotional health, resilience, and spiritual authority. These are treasures no thief can steal, and when they are cultivated, they enrich every life you touch. The psalmist's vision is expansive. Prosperity is not merely about personal comfort, it is about generational impact. A mind anchored in truth becomes a lighthouse, guiding others even through storms. Murphy would often remind his readers that their subconscious impressions influence not only themselves, but the collective consciousness of humanity. Your thoughts are part of a greater field. When you choose faith over fear, you are not only shaping your life, you are adding light to the world. This understanding transforms how you view spiritual practice. Prayer, meditation, and affirmation are not empty rituals. They are acts of planting. Every time you affirm abundance, you are sowing seeds that will bear fruit in their season. Every time you choose forgiveness over resentment, you are removing weeds that could choke your growth. The subconscious mind is incredibly responsive. It does not argue or debate. It simply receives and reproduces. Your role is to be intentional about what you impress upon it. The beauty of Psalm 112's promise is that blessing multiplies. A single seed does not produce one fruit. It produces a tree, which then bears many fruits, each containing more seeds. Your conscious choice to align with divine law can set off a chain reaction of abundance far beyond your own life. This is why Jesus often spoke in agricultural metaphors. Spiritual principles are like seeds, small in appearance but carrying infinite potential. If this feels overwhelming, take heart. You are not required to fix everything at once. Start by noticing the seeds you plant daily. What do you say to yourself in moments of challenge? What beliefs do you repeat without question? What emotions dominate your inner atmosphere? Begin to replace fear-based thoughts with truth-based affirmations. This is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about choosing alignment with the laws that govern life. Over time, those choices will rewrite your mental patterns, and the harvest will come. Psalm 112 invites you to see yourself as a spiritual gardener, shaping a future that will outlive you. You are planting seeds of stability, generosity, and wisdom that will bless generations. And as Murphy emphasized, once these seeds are planted in faith, they must grow. The law cannot fail. Your only role is to nurture them with trust, water them with gratitude, and remove the weeds of doubt. This is the quiet, steady work of creating generational wealth, not just in bank accounts, but in hearts, minds, and souls. Prosperity is not built only on thought. It is sustained by the mastery of emotion. Psalm 112 gives us a profound image of this truth when it declares, "He shall not be afraid of evil tidings, his heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord." Here, the psalmist links prosperity not to possessions, but to emotional steadiness. Wealth in its deepest sense is not merely the accumulation of material resources, it is the ability to remain centered when life shakes, to stand steady when others collapse in fear. Emotions are not just inner storms to be endured, they are signals, currents of energy, and, when disciplined, magnets. Joseph Murphy consistently emphasized this principle. The subconscious mind responds most powerfully to feeling. A thought repeated without emotion may fade, but a thought charged with feeling becomes a command to the subconscious. In this way, emotions are the true drivers of manifestation. To master them is to master the creative process. The person of Psalm 112 embodies this mastery. Their heart is fixed. This does not mean their emotions are suppressed or denied. It means their emotional core is anchored. They may feel the winds of fear blow, but they are not uprooted. Their inner state is governed by trust, not by circumstances. This steadiness is prosperity in action, for it transforms emotions from being reactive storms into magnetic forces that attract stability and abundance. Consider how most people live. They allow emotions to dictate their choices. Fear drives them into haste. Anger blinds them to opportunity. Worry robs them of sleep. These emotions, left unchecked, become seeds that reproduce in their subconscious. A fearful thought, charged with emotion, produces fearful experiences. But the upright person of Psalm 112 shows us another way. Emotional mastery. When fear rises, they redirect it into faith. When anger tempts them, they choose compassion. When uncertainty looms, they remain steady, anchored in the reality of divine order. Murphy explained that emotion is the language of the subconscious. If thought is the blueprint, emotion is the power that makes the blueprint a reality. This is why affirmations must be felt, not just spoken. A cold repetition of words does little. But when you speak with conviction, when you feel gratitude as if the blessing were already yours, the subconscious accepts it as fact and moves to express it. The psalmist captures this perfectly. A fixed heart trusts even before it sees evidence. That trust generates emotional resonance, and that resonance magnetizes prosperity. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm. Around you, the wind howls and the rain lashes, but beneath your feet, the ground is solid. The storm may rage, but your foundation does not move. This is the image of emotional mastery. Outward conditions will always change. Markets rise and fall, relationships shift, health ebbs and flows. But the prosperous soul is not tossed about by every wave, because their inner world is anchored in something deeper than appearances. This is why the psalm emphasizes trust, not blind optimism, but a deep conviction that life is governed by law and that harmony will prevail. This mastery transforms how you handle opportunities. Oh, a fearful person hesitates when opportunity knocks, second-guessing themselves until the moment passes. An anxious person rushes without discernment, scattering their energy. But a person with emotional mastery acts with calm clarity. They do not let panic or excitement control them. They move with wisdom, guided by a steady heart. Such actions naturally lead to prosperity, not because of luck, but because clarity produces better decisions. Joseph Murphy frequently wrote about people who sabotaged themselves through unmanaged emotions. A person may hold a belief in abundance, but allow fear of loss to dominate their feelings. That fear, more than the belief, shapes the subconscious impression. The result is struggle and instability. Emotional mastery means aligning your feelings with your thoughts, so that both send the same signal to the subconscious. When belief and feeling unite, manifestation becomes inevitable. It is important to note that emotional mastery is not emotional suppression. The psalmist does not say the righteous person never feels fear. Rather, they are not controlled by it. Suppressed emotions fester, mastered emotions transform. When fear arises, you can acknowledge it without surrendering to it. You redirect it into trust, reminding yourself that divine law governs all. When anger stirs, you do not deny it but channel it into constructive energy, choosing compassion over destruction. This is the art of turning raw emotion into spiritual fuel. In practical terms, how do you cultivate this mastery? Begin with awareness. Notice your emotional patterns. When negative feelings arise, pause and ask, what belief is fueling this emotion? Then choose a higher truth. This is not about denying reality, but about choosing the reality you align with. Murphy recommended affirming peace and abundance until the feeling of peace replaced the feeling of fear. The subconscious responds to the dominant emotion, so your work is to shift the emotional current until it harmonizes with your desired belief. This practice aligns beautifully with Psalm 112's vision. A fixed heart does not emerge overnight. It is cultivated through repeated choices to trust, to redirect, to anchor yourself in truth. Each time you choose faith over fear, you strengthen the architecture of your emotional world. Over time, steadiness becomes your default. Fear may knock, but it no longer enters unchallenged. Worry may whisper, but it no longer dictates your decisions. You become a person who radiates calm, and that calm draws prosperity because it signals to life itself. Here is a soul prepared to steward abundance. Think of emotional mastery as magnetic stability. Just as a compass always points north, your emotions, when mastered, always return to trust. This does not mean you never feel shaken. It means you know how to return quickly to center. And that return to center is what makes you unmovable in a movable world. It is why the psalmist declares that such a person's heart is established. He shall not be afraid. Fear may come, but it cannot stay. Doubt may appear, but it cannot dominate. The magnet of faith draws your emotions back to alignment, and that alignment draws prosperity. This mastery also blesses others. People naturally gravitate to those whose emotions are steady. A leader who panics spreads instability. A leader who remains calm inspires confidence. Families, teams, and communities are strengthened when even one person embodies emotional mastery. The psalmist knew this. Light ariseth in the darkness. Your steadiness becomes light for others. It reassures, inspires, and creates an atmosphere where abundance can flow collectively. As you integrate this truth, remember that emotions are not enemies to be conquered, but energies to be directed. Fear, anger, joy, gratitude, all are currents. Oh, mastery is the art of guiding those currents toward harmony with divine law. When you succeed in this, you become not only prosperous, but magnetic, drawing to yourself the resources, people, and opportunities that resonate with your steady heart. Psalm 112 is clear. Prosperity is not luck, but alignment. And alignment includes not just your thoughts, but the emotions that give those thoughts power. To live this way is to carry a wealth that transcends circumstance. You may lose possessions, but you will not lose peace. You may face setbacks, but you will not lose hope. This steadiness is prosperity in its purest form, an unshakable inner wealth that continually produces outward blessing. What happens when wealth flows through you instead of stopping with you? Psalm 112 answers with a picture of movement. He hath dispersed, he hath given to the poor. His righteousness endureth forever. His horn shall be exalted with honor. The language is kinetic dispersed, given, endureth, exalted. Prosperity in this vision is not a static hoard, but a living current. Like breath, intake and outflow must remain in rhythm. Generosity is circulation in motion. It turns the idea of abundance into embodied practice. When you give money, time, competence, you announce to your subconscious that supply is present and increasing. You also enter the wider ecology of life, where every gift is a seed cast into ground you may never see again, yet whose fruit often returns by paths you could not design. Notice how the verse celebrates both impulse and integrity. He hath dispersed, that is the generous impulse. His righteousness endureth, that is moral integrity and inner order. Giving, then, is not leakage, it is principled circulation. The prosperous person does not give to impress, manipulate, or numb guilt. Outflow becomes clean and consistent when the inner world is aligned. There is a reason tight-fisted living often coincides with tight-chested anxiety. Hoarding tells the nervous system that danger is permanent. The body braces, breath shortens, imagination narrows. Conversely, generosity signals safety. It says to the whole being, there is enough, there will be enough. That message widens perspective and invites creative ideas. Giving does more than help another. It recalibrates the giver into trust. Yet generosity is not naivety. The same psalm speaks of guiding affairs with discretion. Circulation requires channels. Rivers need banks, or they become floods. In practice, this means aligning outflow with clear purpose. Choose causes that resonate with your values. Support in ways that protect dignity rather than breeding dependency. Give from overflow rather than from the self-neglect that later ferments into resentment. Wisdom keeps the water within banks so it nourishes what it touches. Picture a well-run orchard. Fruit is harvested at the right time, portions are enjoyed, portions are replanted, portions are shared to strengthen the village. Waste is minimized, cycles are honored, and the trees remain vigorous across seasons. This is the rhythm of the psalm: dispersal without depletion, righteousness without rigidity, honor as the quiet byproduct of wise circulation. Generosity also expands identity. Many people live inside narrow self-concepts. I am someone who needs, or I am barely scraping by. When such a person gives, even modestly, they act from a larger self, and the subconscious notices. A new pattern forms. I am a contributor, a channel, a bearer of supply. Repeated action consolidates that identity, and reality echoes it. Relationships respond to genuine outflow. Recommendations arrive because your name carries the aroma of reliability. People relax around you when they sense you are not playing a zero-sum game. This social capital cannot be bought. It grows through years of steady generosity. And when seasons of need come, as they visit every life, those relationships become conduits of return. The psalm names this honor, the elevation that follows those who live as givers. At times, the mind objects. If something leaves the hand, the total decreases. The ledger is mathematically tidy and spiritually incomplete. In living systems, totals grow through circulation. Breath proves it. Exhale without dread because the next inhale will come. Even knowledge multiplies when shared. The same law applies to resources. Give in alignment with truth and discretion, and you join a compounding ecosystem instead of a closed vault. A caution is needed. Generosity is not performance. If the gift is spiked with self-importance, the spirit of the law is dulled. Quiet giving protects purity. Anonymous giving protects the soul from craving applause. Sometimes the noblest gift is presence, listening without agenda, offering perspective without dominance. Sometimes it is restraint, refusing to rescue in ways that rob another of growth. Circulation is intelligent. It searches for the form of giving that truly serves the whole. Practical anchors keep this law alive. Establish a rhythm that fits your season, perhaps a fixed percentage of income, weekly acts of service, a small reserve for unexpected needs, or recurring mentorship. Treat these not as heroic stunts, but as ordinary hygiene for the soul. When fear tightens, return to the rhythm. When surplus arrives, widen the channels. Keep simple records, not to boast, but to witness how the river has run through your life and where it has brought green to dry ground. The Psalms promise that His righteousness endureth forever, hints at time-resistant seeds. The immediate result may be invisible, the long harvest can outlive you. A scholarship offered today may ripple into a breakthrough decades hence. A patient conversation may divert a life from bitterness, redirecting an entire family line. You're not asked to map the returns. Your task is to keep the current clean and moving. What about beginnings? When resources feel thin, begin where you are. Begin with gratitude, which loosens the inward fist. Begin with small, consistent offerings your integrity can sustain. Begin with repair, make right where fairness has been delayed. Begin with courage. Speak the kind word. Offer the introduction. Share the competence. The scale matters less than sincerity. Life answers not with guarantees, not on demand, but with the steady reliability of a law fulfilling itself through willing channels. Generosity clarifies priorities. As outflow becomes intentional, waste becomes obvious. Purchases driven by image lose their pull when you taste the deeper satisfaction of fueling something that matters. Time spent in trivial distraction is reclaimed when you feel the joy of investing presence where it heals. Far from impoverishing you, this clarity concentrates your resources toward meaning, which is itself a durable wealth. There will be moments when giving costs you comfort. Let them teach resilience. The psalm does not present a life free from challenge. It presents a person whose inner order outlasts challenge. He shall not be afraid of evil tidings. That steadiness is both cause and effect of generous living. Cause because a trusting heart can open its hand. Effect because a life practiced in circulation knows from experience that supply is not a single reservoir, but a network of springs. In the end, generosity is a vote for a universe of order. It declares that we do not live in a closed cage of rivalry, but in a living field of reciprocity. Psalm 112 sketches this reality with calm certainty. Dispersal leads to endurance. Endurance culminates in honor. To live it is to become a river in a thirsty land, never empty, always moving, leaving growth in your wake. There is a profound moment in Psalm 112 where prosperity is no longer pictured as a quiet current or a steady posture, but as courage in motion. His heart is established, he shall not be afraid, until he see his desire upon his enemies. The imagery is vivid, a heart so anchored in faith that fear cannot dictate its pace. Here, prosperity is not just alignment or generosity. It is boldness, a willingness to act before physical evidence appears. True abundance is never passive. It flows through courageous action born of conviction. This courage is not recklessness. It is not impulse disguised as faith. It is movement that comes from deep trust in divine law, a trust so strong it overrides fear's paralysis. To act with courage is to declare that unseen order is more reliable than temporary appearances. This is why a person rooted in spiritual law can make bold decisions calmly. Their confidence is not a gamble. It is built on a foundation that cannot be shaken. Think of a farmer planting seed in barren-looking soil. To the casual observer, this act might appear foolish. Yet the farmer moves with quiet certainty, knowing the laws of growth will not fail. Likewise, courage in life often looks irrational to the fearful because it trusts what cannot yet be seen. Prosperity begins as inner alignment, but it matures into outward demonstrations only when courage bridges the unseen and the seen. Most people wait for visible security before they act. They delay the leap, the investment, the new chapter, hoping for guarantees. Yet guarantees rarely arrive. Fear thrives on this delay, whispering that more proof is needed, more safety, more validation. Psalm 112 offers a different picture, a heart established, unshaken, moving forward with conviction. The prosperous soul does not recklessly disregard caution, but refuses to be governed by fear's endless demands for evidence. Courage is not absence of fear, it is mastery over it. Fear will often walk beside you as you step into a new venture, but courage prevents it from leading. Fear says, wait until conditions are perfect. Courage says, move now, because alignment itself is the condition. This is why prosperity so often eludes those who worship certainty. Spiritual law responds to faith, and faith is proven in motion. This principle applies not only to finances, but to relationships, health, creativity, and purpose. The opportunity to speak truth when silence feels safer, to forgive when resentment feels justified, to give when logic says, hold back. These moments reveal your trust in a higher reality. Prosperity is not a static bank balance, but a dynamic relationship with life. It grows through courageous acts that align with principle, even when appearances seem hostile. Courageous action also rewires the subconscious mind. Every time you move forward despite fear, you reinforce a new identity. I am someone who trusts the law of life. Over time, this identity becomes instinctive. Decisions that once felt terrifying become natural because your inner architecture has been strengthened through practice. This is why the psalmist emphasizes a heart established. Establishment is the fruit of repeated trust. Consider the opposite pattern. When fear consistently dictates action, the subconscious receives that impression. It begins to interpret the world as unsafe, opportunities as threats, and abundance as scarce. This mindset attracts limitation because it constantly signals danger. But courageous action sends a different message to your inner world. It says, there is enough. The path is open. I am guided. This belief draws opportunities that match your courage. The verse also speaks of seeing desire upon enemies. In ancient language, this was a metaphor for triumph over opposition, both external and internal. Today we can understand enemies as limiting beliefs, doubts, and patterns that resist growth. Courage confronts these inner enemies by refusing to bow to them. You break cycles of fear when you act boldly, and in doing so, you claim new territory within your own mind. Yet courage is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet persistence. It is waking up one more day to a difficult situation and choosing trust again. It is saying yes to an opportunity even when your hands tremble. It is forgiving yourself and starting anew after a failure. These acts may seem small, but they are spiritual victories. Each one reinforces your alignment with truth and signals to life that you are ready for more. Wealth built on courage carries a different energy than wealth built on manipulation or fear. It carries peace. When your actions are born from alignment, not desperation, prosperity feels lighter, freer, more sustainable. You do not have to clutch it tightly because you know the source is not a single paycheck, client, or connection. It is a law that never fails. This assurance gives you freedom to keep taking bold steps, knowing that supply flows not from chance but from principle. Think of pioneers, inventors, and leaders whose lives demonstrate this psalm's truth. They moved forward when circumstances offered no guarantees. They trusted an inner conviction stronger than external evidence. While their courage often inspired others, its deepest reward was internal, the establishment of a soul unafraid to live fully. Prosperity is not only measured by what you acquire, but by the person you become, a person who trusts, acts, and creates even in uncertainty. You may feel resistance to this message. Perhaps fear has been a long-time companion, whispering that safety lies in hesitation. But fear is not safety. It is stagnation. The psalmist paints a different life, a person whose heart is so anchored in spiritual law that fear loses its authority. This heart does not rush foolishly, but it does not wait endlessly either. It discerns, decides, and moves, confident that guidance is always present. To cultivate this courage, begin with small acts of faith. Take one step that aligns with your vision, even if it feels uncomfortable. Speak the truth gently. In a situation where you would normally stay silent, give more than you usually would. Invest time or resources in a dream without waiting for complete certainty. These actions are not merely behavioral changes, they are spiritual practices. They train your subconscious to see life as trustworthy. Soon, this courage becomes part of your character. It ceases to feel like bravery and begins to feel like normalcy. You no longer panic at uncertainty because you have seen, repeatedly, that the law responds to trust. This is the prosperity Psalm 112 describes: a wealth of heart, a stability of mind, and a boldness of spirit that creates abundance from the inside out. Courage is the hinge on which prosperity swings. Without it, all understanding remains theoretical. With it, understanding becomes demonstration. The psalmist does not describe a timid, fearful life, but one marked by dignity and triumph. That life is available to anyone willing to trust the unseen and move with conviction. Prosperity is not waiting in some distant future. It is activated now, each time you choose to act with courage rather than fear. Prosperity becomes enduring only when it is woven into the fabric of daily life. Psalm 112 is not a poem to be admired and forgotten. It is a rhythm to be lived, a blueprint for consistent practice. The verses describe a person whose habits and choices reflect their inner alignment. Generosity is not occasional, but natural. Trust is not sporadic, but steady. And righteousness is not performance, but pattern. To embody this psalm is to carry its principles from sacred spaces into ordinary routines until they become inseparable from who you are. Daily living is where faith is tested and strengthened. It is easy to feel aligned in moments of inspiration, during quiet prayer or reflection, but the true demonstration of spiritual order happens in how you speak to those closest to you, how you respond to unexpected challenges, and how you steward your time and resources. Prosperity is not a single event. It is a continual unfolding. Like breathing, it requires rhythm. Inhale, exhale, receive, give, pause, act. When that rhythm is honored, abundance feels less like a chase and more like a natural flow. The psalmist emphasizes stability. Surely he shall not be moved forever. Such stability is not achieved in one great leap, but through repeated acts of trust. Each morning becomes an opportunity to anchor yourself again, to choose gratitude over anxiety, clarity over confusion. This is why ancient wisdom often likened spiritual practice to cultivation. Just as a garden must be tended daily, watering, pruning, clearing weeds, your mind and habits require ongoing care. Small choices made consistently create the inner order that sustains prosperity. Consider the difference between aspiration and embodiment. Many people aspire to abundance. They admire its principles, repeat affirmations, or read books about it. Yet their daily habits often contradict what they claim to believe. They speak words of scarcity, dwell on fear, and react impulsively to circumstances. Embodiment, however, means living as if divine law is already operating, because it is. It means speaking with confidence even when conditions seem uncertain, giving generously even when logic says to hold back, and making decisions from trust rather than fear. Over time, this alignment becomes second nature. Practical anchors help solidify this rhythm. Begin and end your day with intentional thought, a simple prayer of gratitude, a moment of visualization, a quiet declaration of trust. These practices are not rituals for ritual's sake. They reprogram the subconscious and set your emotional tone for the day. Keeping your mind anchored in truth at key moments, morning, transitions, and evening, creates a sense of flow that carries through all activities. Psalm 112 speaks of a heart fixed and established. This language suggests permanence. A fixed heart is not constantly uprooted by circumstances, it is trained. This training happens through repetition. Each time you respond to fear with faith, you strengthen that mental muscle. Each time you give when fear says to hoard, you reinforce a pattern of trust. Each time you pause to listen to inner wisdom instead of rushing, you prove to yourself that guidance is available. Daily practice is not glamorous, but it is powerful. It rewires your subconscious until prosperity becomes your natural state rather than a fleeting experience. Daily living also tests generosity. It is easy to be generous when inspired, but true prosperity is reflected in small, consistent acts of giving. This could mean offering kindness to a stranger, sharing insight with someone who needs encouragement, or managing your finances with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. The Psalm's vision is of a person whose life is a source of blessing, not because they occasionally do grand things, but because their entire being radiates abundance. Such a person becomes a steady light, a refuge for those around them. To live this psalm is also to cultivate discernment. Awe, generosity, and trust do not mean recklessness. The wise steward listens for guidance before giving, acts with purpose rather than impulse, and recognizes that resources, time, energy, and money are sacred trusts. This balance between giving freely and managing wisely is part of the rhythm of prosperity. It reflects a deeper understanding. Abundance is not only about increase, but also about flow. You are both a receiver and a distributor, a participant in a divine economy where circulation is the proof of health. Challenges will come. Living the psalm daily does not mean avoiding hardship, but meeting it differently. When news arrives that would normally cause panic, you respond with steadiness because your heart is fixed. When plans shift unexpectedly, you adjust without losing your center, because your trust is rooted in something beyond appearances. This calm is not denial, it is mastery. It is the fruit of living in harmony with spiritual law long enough to see its reliability. Over time, this steadiness becomes your greatest wealth, more valuable than possessions because it cannot be shaken. Integrating these principles into everyday life also requires humility. Prosperity is not about proving superiority or showcasing abundance. It is about alignment with truth. This humility protects you from pride when things go well and from despair when challenges arise. A person anchored in Psalm 112 understands that abundance flows through them, not from them. They are a channel, not the source. This perspective keeps gratitude alive, and gratitude keeps the flow open. Imagine what your life would feel like if this rhythm became natural. Mornings would begin not in anxiety, but in quiet strength. Evenings would close not with exhaustion, but with peace. Relationships would shift because your presence carries stability. Decisions would become easier because you trust guidance rather than panic over every detail. Financial matters would feel less like a scramble and more like stewardship. This is the life described by the psalm, not a life without storms, but a life so rooted that storms lose their power to uproot you. The daily embodiment of these truths is what transforms spiritual principles from theory into reality. It is one thing to believe that thoughts create reality. It is another to watch your relationships, health, and finances shift because you have consistently chosen to live from that belief. Over time, this embodiment becomes your testimony. You no longer need to convince others with words because your life demonstrates the law in action. This steady rhythm also guards against spiritual stagnation. Inspiration can fade if not anchored in action. Many people experience a spiritual awakening only to slip back into old habits because they failed to translate insight into practice. Psalm 112 is a reminder that prosperity is not a moment of inspiration, but a lifestyle. It calls for daily choices that align with divine order until those choices become automatic. Ultimately, to live this psalm daily is to embody faith in a way that cannot be faked. People will feel it in your calm presence, hear it in your words, and see it in your decisions. You will become proof that spiritual principles are not abstract ideas, but practical realities. This is true prosperity, not a fleeting blessing, but a steady daily rhythm of trust, generosity, and alignment that transforms both your life and the lives of those you touch. The prosperity described in Psalm 112 is not a fleeting reward or a temporary burst of success. It is a spiritual legacy, one that outlives possessions, careers, and even lifetimes. This final vision transcends the pursuit of material comfort and speaks to something deeper, the imprint of a life lived in alignment with divine law. His righteousness endureth forever, the psalmist declares. This is a wealth that cannot be counted on ledgers, a treasure that remains even when the world's definitions of success fade. Legacy is often misunderstood. Many assume it is built through accumulation, wealth passed down, property acquired, achievements displayed. But the psalm shifts the focus. Righteousness, integrity, and alignment are what endure. True prosperity is not only what you gather, but what you leave in the hearts and minds of those you influence. It is the unseen inheritance of wisdom, courage, generosity, and spiritual clarity that ripples forward through generations. Think about the people who have shaped your own life most profoundly. Perhaps they were not the richest or most famous. Perhaps their names are unknown outside of a small circle. Yet their character, faith, or compassion left a permanent mark on you. That is legacy. It is the light of a steady life, shining so brightly that it continues to guide others long after its earthly chapter has closed. Psalm 112 celebrates this enduring influence. The generation of the upright shall be blessed. Blessing here is not a transaction, it is continuity, the transmission of stability, strength, and insight that outlives any single moment. This perspective reframes prosperity entirely. Instead of asking, "How much can I achieve or acquire?" the question becomes, "What foundation am I building for others to stand on?" Prosperity becomes less about possessions and more about the kind of presence you carry. A person rooted in this psalm becomes a spiritual landmark, a source of refuge for those navigating uncertainty. Their generosity becomes a pattern that others imitate. Their courage becomes a permission slip for others to be bold. Their trust in divine law becomes an inheritance of faith. In this way, legacy is not built at the end of life. It is built daily. Every choice to live generously, every act of integrity, every decision made in faith rather than fear, adds to a structure that will stand long after you are gone. The Psalm's language of permanence, endureth forever, is not exaggeration. Ideas are immortal, Patterns of thought are passed down in families, communities, and cultures. When you choose alignment with truth, you are not just shaping your life, you are reshaping history in subtle but profound ways. We often underestimate the power of our presence. A single moment of calm in a chaotic situation, a single word of wisdom offered at the right time, a single act of courage when fear was expected. These small actions become stories others carry. They ripple outward, influencing decisions, shaping character, and inspiring transformation. This is prosperity at its highest, to live in such a way that your life becomes a beacon, not because of wealth you display, but because of truth you embody. The psalmist's emphasis on righteousness is key. Righteousness is not rigid morality, but rightness alignment with divine order. When you live in this alignment consistently, you create stability in an unstable world. That stability becomes a form of wealth. People crave it, draw strength from it, and build their own lives around the example you set. This is why the psalm speaks with such certainty. Surely he shall not be moved. The prosperous soul is not shaken by headlines, market fluctuations, or the opinions of others, because their foundation is eternal. That kind of steadiness is contagious. This perspective also relieves the pressure of comparison. Many measure their worth by visible achievements, feeling inferior when others appear more successful. But Psalm 112 reminds us, true prosperity is invisible first. Your most valuable contributions may never be recognized publicly, yet they can reverberate for generations. A life of integrity and courage creates ripples far greater than a moment of recognition. This is wealth that cannot be stolen or diminished because it is rooted in spiritual law. In practical terms, legacy is built through simple consistency. Small choices add up. Choosing honesty when dishonesty seems easier, practicing generosity, even in seasons of lack, maintaining faith when fear shouts loudest. Over years, these choices become your reputation, your spiritual signature. Long after your name is forgotten by history, the patterns you set will remain, shaping lives you will never meet. The psalm calls this honor, not the shallow honor of titles, but the deep honor of a life that harmonizes with divine order. Legacy is also built by what you teach, consciously or unconsciously. Every interaction is a lesson, every reaction a model. Children watch not only what we say, but how we respond under pressure. Friends notice how we treat those who cannot repay us. Colleagues observe whether we live by the principles we claim to value. Your life is always teaching, and those lessons outlive you. When you live this psalm, you become a walking sermon, not of religiosity, but of stability, courage, and generosity that speak louder than words. This is why the psalmist's view of prosperity is so radical. It is not centered on personal gain, but on contribution. A prosperous life is one that gives more than it takes, strengthens more than it drains, and uplifts more than it consumes. Such a life becomes a channel for divine abundance, and through that channel, blessings flow not only to you, but through you. This is spiritual economy at its finest. You are both enriched and enriching, blessed and blessing, a link in a chain of abundance that stretches far beyond your own existence. As you reflect on these truths, consider what kind of legacy you are building right now. Are your daily choices planting seeds of fear or faith? Are your words creating heaviness or hope? Are your actions teaching scarcity or abundance? Legacy is not built in grand gestures, but in countless small moments, where you choose alignment over compromise, love over indifference, trust over cynicism. Those choices form the invisible architecture of your spiritual wealth. Psalm 112's promise is not simply that you will prosper, but that your prosperity will endure. This endurance is the mark of true wealth. Money may change hands, possessions may be lost, but a legacy of integrity and wisdom continues to bless long after material wealth has disappeared. This is prosperity as a spiritual reality, a river that flows through generations, carrying the fragrance of a life rooted in divine order. When you embrace this perspective, your pursuit of abundance becomes lighter. You no longer strive anxiously to prove your worth through what you own or achieve. Instead, you focus on who you are becoming and what you are contributing. And from that focus, material blessings often follow naturally, not as trophies, but as tools to expand your influence for good. Prosperity ceases to be about accumulation. It becomes about impact. To live in this way is to step into the psalmist's vision fully, a life so aligned with truth that it becomes unshakable, a presence so grounded that it inspires stability in others, and a legacy so rich that it continues to bless even when your voice is silent. This is the hidden prosperity formula revealed in Psalm 112, not a secret to manipulate wealth, but a pattern to embody that transforms everything it touches. As this journey through Psalm 112 draws to a close, let its rhythm settle deeply into your spirit. These verses have never been mere poetry or ritual. They are living architecture, shaping minds and lives across centuries. They invite you to build a life that cannot be shaken, to stand on principles that outlast the rise and fall of circumstances, and to embody a prosperity that is steady, generous, and enduring. We have seen that wealth is more than numbers. It is a posture of trust, a character refined by truth, and a courage that moves even when the path is not fully lit. This prosperity is not earned through frantic striving or anxious accumulation, but through daily alignment with law, thought by thought, choice by choice. It is a wealth that flows through your actions and words, blessing those around you and creating ripples that extend far beyond your lifetime. Take a moment to imagine yourself living from this place of calm assurance. Your heart is steady, your mind is clear. You are a source of peace and wisdom in a restless world. You have enough and more than enough, not only in resources, but in love, in creativity, in faith. And because you live from this fullness, your life becomes a refuge for others, a quiet testimony that spiritual principles are not abstract, but real, practical, and transformative. Carry this message with you as you step back into your day or drift toward rest. Let it remind you that every thought you plant is a seed, every emotion a current of energy, every action a declaration of faith. You are a co-creator with the divine, shaping not only your life, but the future. This is your calling and your privilege, to live with such trust and integrity that your very presence testifies to a higher order. So, breathe deeply, release tension. Let gratitude rise within you like a steady tide. You are not striving for prosperity, you are awakening to it. It has been here all along, written in the structure of your being, echoed in the wisdom of ancient texts, and confirmed in the quiet strength of your own spirit. From this place, abundance flows naturally, peace flows naturally, guidance flows naturally. As you rest or reflect, carry this truth. You are already standing within the river of divine supply. You need not chase what is meant for you. You only need to align with it, trust it, and let it shape you into a channel of blessing. May this understanding bring you clarity, courage, and deep rest tonight. May your heart be fixed, your path illuminated, and your life a testament to a prosperity that truly endures.